Welcome to this info session. Today we're going to be talking about Biomimicry Global Design Challenge. My name is Jacques Shirazi. I'm the Director of Student Entrepreneurship in the Blackstone Launchpad here at the Basement, and we're part of the Office of Innovation and Commercialization at UCSD. So today I'm discussing the Biomimicry Global Design Challenge, kind of the purpose of the program, what does it entail, what do we have to offer for all students to participate. This competition is open to all UC students. You don't have to be a basement team to participate. It's open to graduate and undergraduate students. And it's really an opportunity for everyone to practice biomimicry and also being able to compete on this global competition. Just before I begin, just a quick sense of what biomimicry means. For some of you may already know, bio means live, mimic to mimic life. And really this whole program is all about learning from nature and applying those strategies into solving human problems. So I'm going to walk you through a slide deck and then happy to answer questions. So let's begin with this first slide where, kind of what is the purpose of why do we want to look into nature? Part of it is because we as humans are so connected to a natural world, right? We all been outdoor. Maybe some of you have been in the middle of beautiful places, hiking, camping, and there's a sense of connection there. There's a sense of being there in a unique place. And this is really a strong physiological need that humans have to be part of the environment. Humans are not separate from our environment. We are part of our environment. We're not, we don't live in a separate world, if you will. The environment is not a separate thing from the human world. We also know that the more time we spend outdoor, the more we feel better, right? We feel less stressed, less depressed, more focused, often more alive, and more restored. So there's a physiological need of being connected to nature, and that goes back thousands of years. Even when we were roaming the earth, 12,000 years, there was a deep connection in being part of the environment. What we also know, the human system has been great. We've had a rapid growth in populations for the last 150 years, thanks to technology. But we've kind of following a model that has been a successful model for a long time, which we refer as the linear model of production. It's a very extractive model. We rely mostly on rare resources, whether it's fossil fuels or minerals. And that process is extremely important to our own life, to everything that we purchase today come from raw materials that are transformed, distributed, and consumed by us. But the key point here is that this process is very energy intensive, right? There's a lot of embodied carbon in that process. But it's also, the other factor is that a lot of these natural resources are running out. So we have to rethink on how do we reshape this system? How do we reimagine a production system that doesn't rely on this linear focus and maybe more moving towards more of a circular or a whole system, which is really what nature is, right? Nothing in nature is waste. Everything becomes, ends up being recycled over time, right? We also know that the impact that we have on the earth is significant, not only in close to home, but even in far-fetched areas. This is becoming a much larger problematic issue for all humans, but also future generations. So how can we take humans' creativity to potentially change course and look at a different way to approach this problem? And that's one way to look at it. It's also important to keep in mind that we've made progress. We've looked at sustainability as an indicator for change by mostly doing less bad. But I think what we're trying to do and what this program and biomimicry in a sense is really an inspiration, a tool to look beyond just doing less bad, but doing something more restorative, where we're able to really create positive change, where we go deeper than just lessening the impact, where we're able to restore the earth ecological services, but also enhance the quality of life. When you practice biomimicry, you have to keep in mind that you just don't focus on inspiring innovation from biology into design, but it really comes into two other key elements. The ethos is kind of this idea of higher consciousness. It's how to be a good steward of the earth, how to have the good intention to design something that will have a positive effect to humans' life, but also will be a restorative effect to the entire world. It's also this aspect of reconnect. If you're going to be a practitioner and look into nature for solutions, you have to immerse yourself in that natural environment and be willing to observe and be part of it and understand how these incredible organisms are able to thrive and survive in an environment that is ever changing. And obviously, by doing these two things, you eventually get to the point of being able to take those lessons from nature and translate it into some engineering or design principles that could potentially lead to a solution that humans could use. And that's, in a sense, how the practice of biomimicry works. But keep in mind that we humans are part of nature, right? We are not different from other species. We happen to be the dominant species, but long before us, many of the species have been roaming the earth before us, where we're a much younger species, and we have to have humility towards all species. So what is biomimicry? Really, it's basically a tool, a methodology to apply lessons from nature to an invention or an idea to create a more healthier, more sustainable technology for people. People that are working in this field, the designers, and it could be anyone, doesn't have to be an actual someone who have a design background, but anyone who is willing to make a change, focus on the understanding of learning from nature and try to emulate those deep strategies used by living things with the intention of creating designs that could potentially solve or create a more sustainable world for us. But we're doing this with a conscious being intentional to do good, intentional to have an impact to our life, but also the life on Earth. And the emulation, it's really this focus on applying those lessons in nature, those deep design strategy, and applying it to human challenges that you want to solve. And also recognize that the life genius out there, there's all kinds of incredible creators out there that have unique adaptations that we could potentially learn from and potentially take these lessons and apply it to our own systems and potentially come up with a better way to fit in on this planet versus try to impose a way of life. If you look at how the Earth history is, the Earth is roughly about 4 billion years old. If you were to combine that Earth history into 1 year, 12 months, this is just an illustration. There's no scientific value in doing this, but just to give you a sense of time, if you will. So January 1, the Earth is formed. Right around late February, life appears, quickly rely on photosynthesis versus chemical resources. And then for the sake of argument here, many things happens between February and August, but really mid-August, the multicellular life appears, which is us. And then really November becomes this amazing month where fungi, fish, plants, and insects really come along. And then December is the rest, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, birds, and flower. What I ask you is, what is the human history in this? Well, all human history would have taken place the last half hour of the last day. That's how young of a species we are. And if we take a step further, what about industrial revolution, which is really what's called, where we can really think of the modern human being, right? Where we have the advance of machine and equipments and the high urbanization that led to this massive growth in population. That would have taken place the last 2 seconds. So it's really, really recent. And it's also an eye-opener for us to realize that in that short time, we've been able to make so much change to our own system, right? We've been able to alter the Earth ability to manage all the natural resources that we need. And this has potentially some grave consequences for us, but also for all species on Earth. So when you look at nature, right, life been around about 3.8 billion years. Think of it as a continuous R&D evolution. Life is emergent. It's not, there's no plan. You'll see many different strategies out there to try to solve a particular challenge in terms of adaptations. But they all do it in a different way. And some might fail and some might succeed. That's the whole benefit of natural selection. There's roughly about 30 to 100 million species on Earth, probably a lot more than that we don't know of. But think of all these pool of knowledge out there, well-adapted designs that potentially we could seek out answers to survival technology that we could use for ourselves. Someone that probably worth mentioning, and probably if you have time, read her book, Janine Benyus wrote this fantastic book called Innovation Inspired by Nature. She really just combined all that knowledge of people doing research, how to potentially mimic a leaf so that it could function like solar panels and so on. So we can inspire the leaf structures and process photosynthesis and apply that to photovoltaic. Same thing in things around water and other essence. This book is really just a journal of all this incredible innovation. It's quite old already, it's 20 years old, but it's a great read and highly recommend for those that are interested to know more about it. She also has fantastic TED Talks, so if you're interested to hear more about this subject, I would encourage you to watch her TED Talks. But when we think about nature and how nature does all kinds of things, think of it as how, for instance, how does nature desalinate? Well, there's many different strategies. This is actually a mangrove tree. Mangrove tree has a unique way of dealing with this particular niche environment. This is a tree that lives in between a body of fresh water and salty water. It's really able to grow and adapt, and yet able to find a way to exclude the sodium, and there's different ways of doing that. And be able to thrive and survive in an environment that other species would not be able to, right? So this is a very niche strategy that allows this species of trees to be able to survive and thrive. We can also think of how does nature create strong material? This is an abalone shell, one of the strongest structures in nature. This is made of calcium carbonate with some other protein that combines them together. But that structure is sometimes considered and actually stronger than some of the ceramics we make. So again, we humans make very strong ceramic, but it requires a lot of resources, minerals and so on, but a lot of heat and a lot of chemicals. Here's a process where nature's manufacturing process is very different, but yet very effective as well. So there's so much we can learn from that on the material science. When you practice biomimicry, it's important to practice in kind of three ways, if you will, or three avenues. You get form, so form fits a function. So for instance, in this picture is honeycomb nest. So the honeycomb shape is the best shape that creates the most amount of space using the least amount of materials. The center picture is actually spigots from spiders. So spiders have different spigots. These are different strands that are made to make the spider web. This is how nature creates materials. This is the manufacturing process. Again, for the spiders, is using ambient pressure and self-assembly process of protein. And the latter one is looking at systems. So how do large systems like coral reef and forests communicate, share resources, allocate resources, and so on? So we're looking at the connections, but also the symbiosis that we have in that system. And these are great avenues that we could potentially apply to human problems. So here's some examples of case studies. This is a Galapagos shark, a typical type of shark that is found in many parts of the world. This particular one has been noticed by biologists that they've realized that nothing grows on the skin of the shark, right? It has virtually no bacteria growing on the skin. And they went and did some research and realized that actually it's the structure of the skin, right? It's not really smooth. On the nanoscale level, it has this kind of unique diamond shape, which makes it very, very hard for any kind of bacteria to stick to the surface. So think of it in this case, a surface that prevents or inhibits bacterial growth. So companies say, well, that's this marvelous idea. Well, what if we adapt that? What if we mimic that shape? So they went in and did that. They actually were able to mimic that shape using nanoscale technology or nanotech. And they were able to embed it into all kinds of devices, mostly medical device, where again, you don't use chemicals, or you don't have to throw it away because the device itself prevents the bacterial growth on it, right? So it's a way to create a surface using shape that would inhibit bacterial growth. So an amazing breakthrough, and it's a company called Sharklet Technology. The next one, this is one of my favorite organisms. This is a tardigrade. An incredible organism that lives in all kinds of parts of the world, pretty much found anywhere on the world, from the hottest to the coldest place on Earth. In San Diego, in a region, they tend to live in vernal pools, like in absence of water, basically, they would just stay dormant. And they do that by removing water from their body and replace it with a protein. And it could literally remain dormant in a dry environment for decades, right? There's been studies showing that they could survive, maybe 2 or 3 decades. They even took these little guys out of space, brought it back to Earth, and they were still alive. So very resilient creature. But the company was really intrigued by this idea of being able to remain alive while in absence of water. There's a lot of challenge that we have in biotech labs when we try to store DNA, RNA, blood samples, and so on. You have to do it at very cold temperatures. If you want to keep these samples, you can't do it at room temperature. But yet this process is very energy intensive, right? You need buildings, you need a fridge, a lot of energy involved. This company kind of create mimic a process where using chemicals to create an agent and reagent where you're able to use an agent to kind of encapsulate that piece of RNA or DNA. It will remain dormant, and then you will use a reagent to bring it back alive. So no need of storing in cold temperature. You can leave it on a shelf and then really use it whenever you need it. This has been used extensively in biotech labs, in forensic labs, but also this application of this approach in vaccines as well. The company is called Biomimicry. The last example is really looking at systems. So we look at form, process, and systems. So as I mentioned, systems are complex ecological systems that have many different functions. Wetlands are incredible systems, right? They provide habitat, they provide a buffer from between the ocean and the watershed. They also act as this amazing filtration device, right? Watershed also are sometimes even more productive than the rainforest. There's the amount of resources they provide for all kinds of organisms. But when it comes to this filtration device, they're almost acting as a natural filter between the watershed, coming maybe from a fresh source of water or a mountain nearby, and then maybe some sort of a stream or potentially an ocean. And it's really a combination of plant sediments and being able to slow down the flow of water that allows this watershed to be this natural filtration device. So a company actually created a system where this was a particular city in China where there was just raw sewage falling into a canal, which was obviously all kinds of public health issues involved with that. But then in this case, they actually went in and say, well, what if we kind of reconstructed a wetland, using sediments, plants, and do it in a way that we will direct the water, this black water, into these chambers that you could see on the picture, where the water will enter each chamber. And every time they enter the chamber, they will go through sediments and plants. And the plants and the sediments will capture those nutrients and remove those chemicals over time. And nowadays, this is actually an amazing wastewater treatment plant that is a pleasant place to walk around. You could walk around there and wouldn't even imagine that this is actually underneath there's black water going through that canal. So it's an example of using a system for filtering water without using pumps or chemicals. And this company, John Todd Ecological Design, could do this with just any types of body water. So even some very, very nasty chemicals could be treated the same way if you have space and the right amount of sediments and plants. So when you think about biomimicry, it's kind of important to think about kind of this rationale that we just talked about. So in the man-made systems or design, we tend to be more linear. Nature is very cyclical. We tend to be more uniform, where nature banks on diversity. The more diverse, the more resilient. We often look for the largest, the biggest, where nature reaches optimize, whatever it's necessary for that use. As I mentioned before, we're very carbon intensive, very high energy intensive in many things that we do. Nature really look at whatever could be easily self-assembled, right? Low energy process. We rely on the cheapest sources, when nature really relies on whatever it's nearby. Whatever is nearby will be the source of whatever it will build or create. We're highly disposable, as you all know, and nature is biodegradable by definition, right? So closed loop system, there is no waste. Everything ends up being recycled by the natural system over time. So more specifically of the challenge, so I just want to give you an overview of what the biomimicry methodology is and the process and give you a little bit of background. So what we have done is we have this amazing partnership with the Biomimicry Institute, especially around the Biomimicry Global Design Challenge. This is a global competition that happens every year. This is an opportunity for anyone on campus, a graduate or undergraduate student, to participate, not to be part of the basement, to join this team, to work on a project. And this year, the project is really to create a nature-inspired innovation. So it could be a product, a service, or a system that aligns with one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And these are the goals from the United Nations. And then you would have to also incorporate the biomimicry into your proposed solution. So you'll have to look into nature, a biological-based resource or idea to create this solution. So this is just some of the examples. These are the 17 goals from the Sustainable Development Goals. So it could be any of those. It could be more than one. You could focusing on clean water and sanitation. Maybe some people would be interested in focusing on food systems. So it's really anything along the line, as long as it addresses one of them or more than one. And the idea is that you would identify a particular area of interest. Maybe you want to do something around food systems. Maybe you want to address something around how to diminish the amount of fertilizers getting into the waterway system to prevent algae bloom in the ocean. So that could be your entry point there. And then you will say, well, how does nature deals with algae bloom, right? So you will go through that process of searching into nature for solutions, identifying potential solution, and coming up with a potential nature-based solutions or product that could be applied. And that's the premise of the program. The challenge is started already. We will officially begin this challenge in the winter quarter, and it will go on to the spring quarter. So the basement will support teams through those 2 quarters. The actual deadline to submit your applications is June 30th of next year. The basement will cover the fees associated with the submission of the proposals to the Institute. We'll also provide education. So we'll provide some tools, some workshops on how to use biomimicry. We'll provide some guidance on how to help the team kind of think about how to potentially identify a problem, but also how to identify nature-based potential solutions that could apply to that problem. And it really helped the team shape their proposals so that they have a high success of winning this competition. You also have access to mentors, as well as other support that we provide. So this is a fantastic opportunity for anyone who is interested to work on solving a very complex challenge involving the Sustainable Development Design challenges, interested to learn about biology, design, engineering, interested to learn about biomimicry and find a way to practice. This is a great opportunity for everyone to do that. And we encourage anyone to join. You don't have to be part of a team. You could apply on your own. Once we have all the applications completed, we will review them and then assemble teams for those of you that are applying on your own. But, welcoming anyone and encouraging anyone to apply. There's also a fantastic resource that you will have to use and probably use once you be part of this program. It's a search engine called AskNature that is part of the Institute. It's really a first step. So let's say you wanted to address something around sanitations and improving sanitations. Maybe you could be asking, well, how does nature filter materials, or how does nature manage water, right? And you will put that query into the search engine, and then it will give you a bunch of biological strategies that are already been identified. So this is a really great start for people that are just interested to see what's out there and help you kind of explore additional areas. So a fantastic tool. Be happy to help you. Part of the education that we're going to be doing at the basement is to really guide you to that process and help you go from problem identifications, ideation, and then all the way to the biological to design process as well. This is the last slide. I just wanted to end with this nice quote from E.O. Wilson, a fantastic biologist, social scientist. Each species is a masterpiece. In my mind, it's so true because every single species out there could be the answers to some of humans' most needed or desire pressing need to solve a problem, right? So how does nature store energy? How does nature make structures, filter water, and so on? So hopefully this was interesting. Again, to reiterate, this program is open to all students. You don't have to be part of the basement. I would encourage you to apply and submit applications. If you're an individual person, we'll match you with somebody else. The basement will provide all the education. We'll have a number of workshops next year, starting in the winter and spring. where we'll guide you to the process from problem identification, ideation, and then the full proposal to the Institute. The basement will cover all the fees associated with the submission. And for those of you that might be asking what happens next, so once you submit, and if you end up to be one of the finalists, you will be notified as a finalist. I think the Institute has some prize money. I think teams might receive $1,000, or depending on the first or second place. But all those that ends up in the finalist round, I think it's the top 12 or 10, will be given the option to join the Launchpad program, which is kind of the next step beyond the BGDC, which is a design competition, where they'll have a chance to work on their proposed idea and really potentially develop it further by creating a prototype and potentially even creating a business around this. And then the last step in that process is another competition they also offer. It's called the Ray of Hope Prize, which is at that point you'll be able to apply, or eligible to apply for a $100,000 competition. So this is a really fun way to learn about biomimicry. But along the way, if you're very successful and go through all these gates, you could potentially be down the line eligible to submit a competition that is worth $100,000. So a lot more to learn about it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Again, my name is Jacques Shirazi, and I'm the Director of Student Entrepreneurship and the Blackstone Launchpad here at the basement, part of the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. I want to thank you all for listening for this info session. If you have any questions, reach out to us, but look forward to reviewing your applications. Thank you.